The following is an anonymous tip that was deposited into the mailbox of the Lincoln Police Station in Lincoln, Nebraska. The ice cream place on the corner of 48th Street and Vine is a front for human trafficking. It used to be called Soft Serves, and still might be, but they could have changed it by now, and I refuse to even drive near it anymore to double check. I wouldn't venture any more north than 30th these days if I could help it. Had to change my primary, but I didn't tell them why. I should also clarify that the company who supplies their products, I think it's called Utterly Fun Milks and Cheeses or Utterly Fun Dairy Co. or something like that. Their logo is a stupid-looking cow wearing sunglasses. May also be in on whatever is going on there. Hell, I'm not sure of anything anymore. For all I know, they might have cleaned house and just jumped ship to some other place by now. Somewhere also in cahoots with Utterly Fun, if I'm right. And you'll write off this tip as nothing but a waste of your precious time. Don't. For the love of God, don't wait around like I did just to write this all down. I would have reported it sooner, but I was afraid of the plucking and didn't figure it out until last week when the radio... I'm getting ahead of myself. But the end of the story is that Soft Serve is trafficking people, maybe even children. About a month ago, which pains me to admit how much time has passed, I went into what was then called Soft Serves for my bi-monthly ice cream run. If you ask my wife, she wouldn't have known about any of these, and what she didn't know wouldn't have killed her. She's always on one of those fad diets off the TV. This wasn't my first time at the place, in fact. My runs went back for quite some time, enough time to get to know the owner and to be recognized for it at least. On the trip before last, which by my high school math was about 6 weeks ago now, the guy behind the counter, a pimply-faced kid that I had seen before, had let it slip that the place would soon be under new management, a small detail that makes all the sense in the world now. At the time, I think I was preoccupied with the double scoop of pistachio and getting home before my wife could make a comment about it, and the comments didn't really register. It was just one of those niceties, you know, like asking about the weather. The conversation went something like this. Hey, I've seen you in here before. Do you know this place is going to be under new management soon? Really? Bert's leaving? Bert's retiring. Geez, 66 already, huh? Yep. And that was the end of it. I got my double scoop of pistachio, dubbed by Bert the post-game pistachio, aka number 47 on the menu. The place was and is sports-themed, and walked out the door. Never a second thought about the whole new management thing. If anything, it was resolved in my mind. Bert was retiring, and good for him. Lord knows I wished it was me. Besides, Bert was always the kind of guy who liked to train the kids and stuff, hence the one with all the acne. He told me once, my first job was scooping ice cream. I suppose I get to be the cool boss I never had. It only made sense that he'd let it go for the next generation or some other Bertism. I guess that's how this all happened, because I forgot that Bert left, because I didn't read the menu and just went through the motions like I always did. Serves me right, I guess. When I went back in about a month, my last ice cream run I'll ever have, just thinking about the stuff makes me sick now. The place was much quieter than usual. All the same junk was still there, all the sports memorabilia and crap on the walls, so the notion that there was a new menu and new ownership didn't even cross my mind. So I ordered my usual, number 47, 2 scoops, which I indicated by flashing the peace sign. The man behind the counter, I do mean man, was anything but the zit-faced teenager I'd run into the last time. He seemed to study me as he called out the number. I'll describe him for you to the best of my memory. If I had to guess, he must have been about 40 or 50, maybe 45, give or take. He was short, somewhat tan, and had dark hair. Could have been either black or brown. He didn't talk much, but his voice was pretty deep, and he had some sort of tattoo on his forearm. I don't recall what it was. I'd say if you had him in a lineup, I could pick him out, but I've no intention of coming forward for my own safety, lest I'm completely wrong about all this. 45, he seemed to clarify. Yeah. He then nodded and looked around at the 3 or so others enjoying their desserts. Then he said, "Sit, I'll get it for you." "Don't you want me to pay?" I asked. "You pay later." I nodded back, but I knew he could see the look of confusion on my face. Never, not never, in the 2 or so years I'd been going to soft serves, did they ever ask me to pay later or to sit down. It was ice cream, not filet mignon. You scoop it and you hand it over. I guess I figured maybe they had to get a fresh tub of pistachio from the back or something. I knew it wasn't a popular flavor, hence it being demoted to number 46 out of a potential 50 on the rotation. I did what the guy said and had a seat. About that time, which was probably about 5:15 if I had to guess, one of the people sitting at the table beside me got up and left, and a new one entered with the rattle of a cowbell tied onto the door. All the while, I could hear a sort of murmuring from the back room, not loud enough to be distinguished for what was actually being said, but a noise nonetheless. Before long, the man came out, took the new person's order, and handed them their cone within 30 seconds. I stood as they walked out the door, the cowbell jingling again. Excuse me, I didn't. The man waved his hand in front of his face, cutting me off. "Soon," he said, "soon." All I could do was nod back. About 10 minutes went by before both of them finished their ice creams and left, leaving me alone in the place and the short, tan man nowhere to be seen. I considered just leaving, but as soon as I stood, he rounded the back corner and waved for me to approach. I did. "Still waiting," I said, looking behind the counter. He nodded and continued to wave. "Come," he said. "The back there?" He nodded again. I had never seen the back room of an ice cream shop, but it was about what I expected. There's racks of cups and spoons and napkins and stuff, a big freezer, and along the back wall, where I assume the wall rolls up so the dairy trucks can come make deliveries, a dozen or so big boxes. Crates, actually. The first red flag that should have waved in my mind was why they weren't being refrigerated. Hindsight is 20/20, I guess. 46? The man asked over his shoulder, approaching the boxes. Yeah, 2 scoops, I said. The man stopped in his tracks, shooting a fast-paced glance at another guy, who I also didn't recognize. Similar build, slightly taller, thick mustache, and turned on his heels. 2 scoops? I nodded, and my eyes drifted behind him towards the crates. One of them was stenciled with the words, "Utterly Fun." I didn't know how large containers of ice cream were, and I still don't, but their sheer size seemed like overkill for the kind of tubs you usually saw at Baskin-Robbins, and considering they weren't currently being refrigerated meant something else was inside. But what? The man before me said, "Come with me," and marched directly at me. I began to pivot, my body back to where I had come from, and he grabbed me by the arm tightly. Later, I'd find bruises, but at the time, I was so consumed by the crates that I didn't even make a sound. I just let him do it. However, before he could spin me completely around, I caught a glimpse of something that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. On the opposite side of the crate, previously blocked by the man's body, was a small hole drilled perfectly into the wood. probably by a drill bit. I couldn't see inside, but I didn't need to. Something had moved in there, like one of those shadows being replaced by another. And then, just one of my peripherals as I spun, I saw the finger emerging from within and nearly screamed. What came out instead was more like a choke, a cough at best, and a gasp at worst. The man had heard it. He shot a narrow glance over his shoulder and kept pulling me closer and closer from the front room until we reached it. "Have a nice day," he said, letting me go. I took a breath of the fresh ice cream scented air, far cooler than the atmosphere of the somewhat stuffy back room, and turned to face him. What? I said, "Have a nice day, sir." The sir was firm, like a stamp at the end of the letter. Okay, I said, and walked through the door with that cowbell jingling over my head, never once looking back while rubbing down the hairs on my neck. I strutted swiftly to my car, like a man almost late for a meeting, and threw myself inside. The sun was now setting, and whereas I'd always admired the orange yellow of the light, that night the dusk was haunting. I stomped on the brakes, turned the key, and pulled down the shifter into reverse. I immediately began to back up, and then my foot slammed itself down once again as the white dairy truck directly behind my car grew in the rearview mirror. I'd nearly hit it. I honked once politely, waved my hand, then twice aggressively. When the truck didn't move, I rolled down the window and yelled, "Hey, trying to move here," while simultaneously flopping my hands around in the air, which had a sort of chill to it. At first, I thought the thing might have been parked there, but upon second glance, I realized its headlights were still on, and there was someone in the driver's seat. They were looking at me. It was just a shadowy outline of a person, but I knew that they were looking at me. I ducked down and for whatever reason held my breath, as if that might make a difference. The truck honked once, and I knew from the sheer sound and length of it that it wouldn't come twice. I stepped out of my car despite my better judgment, not turning it off, with really no other alternative in mind, perhaps other than to ram the damn thing and speed my ass off. I should have. "Hey, I gotta go, man." The truck rolled forward. It didn't roll far enough to unblock my car, but it rolled far enough so that it was directly facing the driver through the truck's window. With his silhouetted thumb, he pointed towards the back of the thing. I shook my head and repeated, I gotta go," really enunciating each word like I was trying to speak to a deaf person. The driver didn't really seem to care. Instead, he stared at me for a long moment, the two of us frozen in place in that ice cream shop parking lot. I shook my head again, thinking, don't do this, over and over again, hoping that somehow the creep would physically understand me. He didn't, of course. Instead, he bent down and nearly vanished from view. From what I could tell by squinting, he was fishing through some kind of box or something. When his head lifted back up, I could tell, even from the shadows, that something was covering his face. A stray car rolled by on the road behind the truck, and then, when the coast was clear, the truck driver's side door popped open, and the stranger emerged. It hadn't registered to me that the parking lot, its dimly orange lights had flashed on, and as the figure rounded the front of the truck and approached me, they served to reveal him. The man, given his build, was about my height, dressed in some kind of tracksuit and wearing a cow mask. In fact, the mask looked strikingly similar to the logo plastered on the side of the truck, utterly fun, which is a fact that just dawned on me. There were more important things to pay attention to at the time, but the image floated peripherally at the edge of my mind's eye. I stood my ground while curling my toes in my shoes. "Is there a problem?" I asked. The cow-faced man looked blankly at me from the mask's black, dead eyes. Then he spoke in an unfamiliar voice. We can do this easy or not. Do what? Again, he gestured with his thumb, pointing at the back of the truck. Get in. Promise you'll be brought right back to your vehicle once this is all said and done. I shook my head. Just say you did it now, I barked. No good. Not here. Get in. I let out a shaky breath and thought about making a run for it, or hopping back into my car and trying plan B. I did neither, instead trying to keep cool. I agreed and followed the man back to the truck, which was already lifted open. Unfortunately, in my panic, I didn't get the plate number. The back of the truck was a sort of freezer with cardboard boxes stacked on either side. In the middle of these, in what might have been called an aisle, was a single chair. The masked man pointed to it. Take a seat. I did, after jumping up and into the back of the truck. All the while, I'd completely forgotten that I'd left my car on, until I heard it running, even over the rumble of the truck. Hey, turn off my... The engine stopped before I could finish, and the man in the cow mask glanced towards it and raised his head. My keys were thrown into it. You drive. I'll talk to him, he said, clearly to someone I couldn't see. He then lifted himself into the truck, and as I pushed myself backwards into the chair, with every inch into the thing, the temperature got chiller, and now I knew why he might have been wearing the black tracksuit. Before he slammed the back door of the thing, the final remnants of the sunlight cast their eerie orange glow onto the stacked boxes on my left. From top to bottom, they read Rocky Road, Superman, Vanilla and Chocolate Swirl, Milk, Eggs, and Poultry. To me, it was odd that such an array was combined in the back of the truck, even to the point of cross-contamination. But I guess this is more common than I thought. Each of the boxes stared back at me by virtue of the stupid cow and the stupid sunglasses, grinning his cheesy grin. Then again, I guess that was the idea. Yet, despite how kid-friendly the thing was, its mouth wide open, said nothing but, "Ha ha, you stupid bastard, you're about to get skinned alive. See what you get for eating sweets behind your poor wife's back? You're just desserts. Get it? Just desserts." I don't know what you think I saw, but I didn't see anything. I swear to God, man, I didn't see anything. The truck began to rumble forward, and the cow-faced man in the tracksuit took hold of a nearby shelf railing. Letting gravity finish, the door descended. He stabled himself, and then turned to me. "What is it you think I think you saw?" I hesitated. Crates. Just crates, that's it." He nodded behind the cow mask. "Anything else?" I shook my head adamantly. No, nothing. Nothing in the crates? No, what? Ice cream. You think I saw your ice cream? 'Cause I didn't." He nodded once more. "Didn't see a finger? An eyeball?" I choked on my words as the truck hit a bump. Before I could answer, he answered for me. "'Cause I think you did, but I think you're mistaken. There's chickens in those crates. You understand? Chickens. If you saw anything, it was a chicken eye, or a chicken finger, chicken toe, whatever the hell you call it. Chickens couldn't wear red nail polish, you stupid bastard," I thought. God, I hope that was nail polish. I nodded in agreement, though, reading between the lines of what he was saying. Yeah, that's it. That's what I saw. A chicken. It was just a chicken." But even still, we can't have people knowing we keep chickens in crates. The snowflakes would melt over it. Ever heard of cage-free eggs? That bullshit?" I shook my head. No one will ever know. I wouldn't tell a single soul any of it. I swear to God." "Swear to me." I do. I swear to you." The masked man nodded at me as the truck took a turn. Not good enough, he said. I'm going to need insurance. I nodded, acting agreeable as I could under the circumstances. You want my car? You want my credit card? I want you to shut up, he said, shaking his head. I agreed. He then got down on one knee, as if to propose, and looked directly at me through the mask. I could see his warm breath rising up through the silver of the eye slits in the mask, and then realized that we were sitting, in a giant freezer. My body had gone so numb that I hadn't even noticed. And then I did. The air was ice cold, making it only harder to breathe. Do you know about chicken farms? I took in a gasping breath and shook my head. You know about how they process them, right? How they lop their heads off and scald them, that kind of thing. I nodded again. Well, they do all that before they pluck them. Plucking them alive's worse. I agreed, thinking, the hell's this got to do with me? Boy, if I only knew. I'd like to show you, he said. Show me? I thought. Show me what? Show me... Wait, where the hell is this truck taking me anyway? Then I realized I hadn't replied. Show me? What, chickens? Yeah. What do you think's in those boxes? He guffawed and kicking the one reading poultry. Not these, though, he said, eyeing the one stacked on top. Here, he pried the top one open, just enough to reach out and pull out a pint of Rocky Road. Have some. I'm not hungry. Have it anyway. I did. 2 spoonless mouthfuls into the Rocky Road, which, if I even so much as smell anymore, will result in gagging. The truck began to slow. I could feel its tires squealing beneath me. The man in the cow mask stood up straight and cleared his throat. Now, I'm about to do something to you, but don't freak out, okay? My heart stopped. Okay. I'm gonna put a bag over your head. I'm not gonna put it on tight. I'm just doing it for privacy. Got it? I nodded, trying not to tear up. Got it? The man approached me just as the truck stopped. He pulled from perhaps his back pocket a black sack of sorts. Before long, it was over my face, smelling of mildew, rust, and general ass. Can you see anything? No, I lied, being able to see my feet if I looked straight down. I could also make out the moonlight pouring into the back of the truck as the door slid up, simultaneously filling it with warm air. Thank God for that warm air. I'm going to take you by the hand, and we're going to go for a walk, all right? I sniffed through the mask, burning and salt tears smelling into my eyes as the reality of the situation hit me like a ton of bricks. Please don't kill me. Please. I'm not going to kill you. Yet. Please, God, please, I don't want to die. He got really close to me, practically touching the bag with his nose, and I could taste his sour breath. Keep it up, and you'll find out that there are fates worse than death. Much worse. I sucked back some snot and tried to control my breathing. He then started to pull my hand, but I didn't budge. Aggressively, he pulled again. I have a wife. You do anything to me and she'll know right away. She's probably already worried sick. The man went silent for a moment. Then he said, You have a wife. For now. I swear to God, if you lay a finger on her, I thought, but didn't say. It was big talk for a man with a bag over his head. Instead, I simply muttered, She has nothing to do with this. As long as you don't tell her. I won't, I said, and then felt the man tug at me again. 46. What? 46, I repeated. What the hell is number 46? I heard him sigh, not for sale anymore. At least, not for you. It's some kind of secret password, then. Some kind of code. Damn it, of all the stupid stuff to be, it just had to be the same number as my post-game pistachio, didn't it? Some secret, that is. Loosening my footing, I let him drag me to God knew where, which, based on what I heard and smelled, was probably exactly where we'd discussed. A chicken farm. Perhaps a poultry processing plant or something. There's some a ways away from Lincoln, but in the time it took for the truck to reach it, soft serve, I find the rural option highly unlikely. My best guess is that it was a small plant, perhaps. Small private farm, maybe? Like I said, though, I'm not sure of anything anymore. What I am sure of is that rusty smell inside the mask was even stronger as we approached whatever was in front of us. I suppose it might have been genuine rust, especially if the rest of the place was as dingy as the room that he took me to. But it also could have been that metallic, coppery flavor of blood. Even if it wasn't, the sounds of buzzing and balking meant that bloodshed wasn't far away. I watched my own feet shuffle behind the man until we reached a small room where the ground appeared to be as putrid as it smelled. I heard the sound of a metal door slamming shut, and then felt two hands on my shoulder shoving me into a seat. I took it, and then the bag came off. Now, some places pluck their birds by hand, the man said, still muffled by the cow mask. Some have a machine. We do a bit of both, I guess you could say. I heard my heart thumping in my chest as I looked around. The room was small and dimly lit. Felt like I had just dropped my pants on the crapper of a fast food joint. One of the kinds you got to eat in your car, and it didn't smell much different. There were streaks of something, which could have been blood, along the ground, and even some going up the wall. It was a dank place, rancid and dark. Sounds echoed from beyond the room, but I didn't pay much attention to them as the man spoke. When we stopped, though, one was clearer, closer than all the others. In fact, it sounded as if we were in the next room over, only separated by the stained metal walls to my left. Initially, it sounded a bit like the truck with that rumbling kind of noise, but this was deeper, louder, more metallic. Sounded like a chainsaw grinding on concrete or a car compactor chewing up a glass-bottomed boat. The man behind the mask watched as I winced at the sound coming from behind the wall. I went to cover my ears, but his flattened hands stopped me as if telling me to stay. "Wait for it," he said. "Wait for it." All at once, the machine-like noises whirred even higher, and a shrill scream shot through the wall. At first, it sounded like an animal, but animals can't yell out for God by name. This was a man screaming like an animal. I gasped as I tried to catch my breath. What the hell is that? The wailing on the other side of the wall continued as the mechanical noises grinded right along. "The plucking," the cowman said. Plucking? I thought. Plucking what? Humans didn't have feathers. What was being plucked? "You know, some people got waterboarded down in Guantanamo Bay," the man continued. "Said it was unbearable. And they're supposed to be following the Geneva Convention down there. Outside of that, though, should have been crushed, castrated, skinned. Hell, even Christ was crucified. But nothing quite as bad as the plucking." The shrill screams continued, and the walls began to rattle. After an agonizing moment of listening on in pale horror, the voice cut off in favor of a loud, yet disguised, guitar riff. One quite familiar, in fact. It was a blondie, one way or another, coming through what sounded like a crappy radio speaker. Despite enjoying much of Blondie's music, especially Call Me, which was a song my wife and I used to sing quite frequently during our karaoke days, I could no longer listen to Deborah Harry's voice without trembling and an awful sour feeling bubbling in my stomach. Same can be said for the taste or even the smell of ice cream, especially pistachio. Now that I could no longer hear the screaming, despite knowing that whatever was going on to the poor bastard next door was still going on, I focused on mouthing my next words. What's going on over there? Plucking, the man said. Then he reached into his tracksuit pocket and rummaged around for something. I could tell that he found it when his arms stopped twitching. It was a photograph, printed out on an old piece of Polaroid paper. Trust me, you don't want the details, but this should paint a picture. I've done my best to forget what was printed on that piece of paper. Suffice it to say that most of the image was red. I could make out what might have been a person at some point or another. There was a head, 2 arms, 2 legs. Everything else was just red. It was something you might have seen in a horror movie or on one of those sicko websites where people pay top dollar for other people's misery. I only got a quick glance, though, before I started vomiting onto the floor. "That'll be you," the man said as I reached, waving the picture above me. "That'll be you if you say one word about any of this. Got it?" I nodded, still gagging. Who was that, I thought, trying to shove the image out of my mind. Then a terrible idea came to me. Bert. What if Bert didn't retire? What if he... "Say it," the man gruffed. "I got it. I got it," I yelled. "Good," he said, and pocketed the picture. Blondie kept playing from the other side of the wall as the grinding and twisting noise continued in my ears, giving me a massive migraine that I still feel like I haven't shaken. You'll never see me again," I pleaded, trying to stop crying and shaking and gagging all at once. You'll never see me again. You'll never hear from me ever again. I'll never step foot in your store ever again. I didn't see anything. I swear I didn't. Not even your face. And I promise, I don't even remember what the other guy looked like anyway." "Which guy?" "The one who took my order," I cried. "Oh," the masked man said with a chuckle. "Who do you think's being plucked right now?" My stomach sank. Then the bag was shoved over my head again. What followed is a blur to me still, but much of it was more of the same. Except instead of the truck taking me to my car from the processing plant, we went from the plant back to my car, which was still parked in the lot of soft served, now empty. I'd been sweating so profusely that the freezing truck quite literally made my skin icy, and other than the fact that the masked man spoke very little, the drive back was more or less the same as the drive there. When the back door of the thing finally lifted open after what felt like hours, and the outside air hit me, I huffed it up like a drug, maybe for no other reason than the fact that it didn't smell like ice cream or blood. I wanted to cry, but I kept my composure as the man watched me jump to the concrete and gather myself. "Remember what we talked about," he said. I nodded. I do. Good. Because if we hear one word that you said anything to anybody, I know, the plucking. He nodded once, then hopped back into the truck. I stood in silence as the engine rumbled into acceleration and rolled from the parking lot. leaving me alone to bask in the orange-tinted light from above. For what must have been a good 10 minutes, I just stood there, unable to move, trembling. My car keys were clutched tightly in one hand, and the other was wrapped around my wrist. Finally, I sighed and began to sob. All this, for pistachio ice cream. In the weeks that followed, leading up to this long-winded tip, and I do thank you for reading it up to this point as I try to recall all the gory details that transpired. I was a nervous wreck. My wife could clearly tell, even as early as that evening as I slid into bed beside her. "You're home late?" "Mm-hmm." She turned over under the covers, which I was on top of. "Long day?" Then I guess she must have seen something on my face. "Baby, what's wrong?" "No, nothing. Just tired." At that moment, I wanted to cry again. I had never lied so bluntly to my wife before. "You look like you could use a hot shower," she said, then sniffed me. "What's that smell?" Just go to bed, babe. I'll shower in the morning." And even though I did, the smell never left my nose. In fact, for the last 4 weeks, I've smelled nothing but metal, be it rust or blood or whatever the hell it is. It's like tasting my own mucus when you're sick. Just worse, and it won't go away. Still hasn't, despite my revelation, which I'll get to. Every now and again since, while watching a movie with my wife, and by watching, I mean staring off into space while holding her closer than I ever had before, I'd hear the faint sound of an ice cream truck come rumbling by with its signature high-pitched tune. I think it's the same melody as It's a Small World, from the Disney World, only I'd fill in with my own lyrics. "If you start to cry, then you're out of luck. 'Cause if she finds out, then you will be plucked." "Bit late for ice cream, isn't it?" she asked. I tightened my arm around her as I got cold all over, despite now being under the covers. Yeah, weird." Suddenly a new song popped into my head, one that made my stomach churn and my temples pulse. The Blondie one. "I'll drive past your house, and if the lights are all down, I'll see who's around." Is that what this is? Intimidation? Boy, did I think so, especially if those neighborhood ice cream trucks sold utterly fun products, which they probably did. They were stalking me, harassing me. No ice cream truck ran at 7 o'clock. Or do they? No, this is just a sick way of keeping tabs on me, making sure I don't squeal, I thought. 'Cause God knows if I do. Then what? I didn't even know what the plucking was in the first place. Only that it sounded painful, and that was an understatement. It was torture. Nothing short of it. But humans don't have feathers, I thought, so what's to pluck? Then an even darker thought seized me as my wife watched a movie in ignorant bliss. "Your eyes out, stupid. They'll pluck your eyes out, your teeth out, your fingers off, every hair on your stupid head. Maybe they'll pluck your skin from your muscles and your muscles from your bones, or scald you just for fun. No feathers required. Maybe your entrails will be plucked from your body, or maybe they'll pluck you from your cozy little house, from your cozy little wife. Don't lie to yourself. There's plenty of ways to be plucked." Suddenly, the image of a memory popped into my head. A childhood toy, actually. Mr. Potato Head with no eyes, no nose, no teeth. After that, my stomach was in knots. I didn't eat dinner. Baked chicken, go figure. And I couldn't go to sleep. At best, my head was on the pillow and my eyes were closed. But it was easier to keep them open, at least until the spinning ceiling fan started looking a bit too much like a saw blade. Then I closed them again, and I was back in that rusty room until morning, where I'd have to stomach watching my wife pluck her fingers from her lips after every bite of bacon. The revelation came about a week ago, and thank God for it. Thank God, yes. I've sat on my hands ever since, just in case I'm wrong, but something tells me I'm not. My wife tells me I'm not. Yeah, she knows now. On my way home from work last Thursday, carefully avoiding any streets north of 30 at all cost, and listening to whatever crap was playing on the radio, the song for The Tide is High came on. A song by Blondie. It was like an unexpected punch in the gut, and immediately I switched the station to some stupid furniture store commercial. No credit, no problem. No money down, 0% APR. Big selection, yeah. Big savings, yeah. And then the ad abruptly cut off to one of those, you're listening to LCWR radio, the tune, or whatever. I guess someone down at the furniture emporium cheaped out on the last 3 seconds of airtime. Then suddenly a light bulb went off in my brain. The voice cut off. It cut off just like that. Just like the screaming did when the Blondie song started to play. Maybe it wasn't real. Maybe it was just a recording or something, like a tape or a CD. Maybe there is no plucking. And even though I didn't believe it, that thought gave me such a relief that I nearly got into a wreck trying to focus on the road. I nearly burst a blood vessel tightening my grip on the wheel. Think about it, stupid. Why didn't they just kill you? Because they don't kill anybody. Because it's just another liability for them. Because it would draw more attention than their real business. And did the screaming even sound like the so-called guy from the ice cream store? Could he have been the one driving the stupid truck in the first place? But what if I'm wrong? What if it was all wishful thinking and the plucking was real and not just a heavy dose of psychological warfare? And if I'm wrong about it, the consequences are beyond severe. Far beyond. Think about that Polaroid picture, I said to myself. Could have been chicken guts, I replied. That night I saw a light at the end of the long tunnel. It gave me hope. Even still, the ice cream truck made its round the next day, serenading the entire neighborhood with It's a Small World. It drove especially slow down the cul-de-sac where I live. Or was that how slow it always drove? I mean, it's got to be pretty slow for the kids, right? And how'd they even know where I live? License plate's stupid. They know your license plate number. And if they've got the number, then they've got your name. And if they've got your name, but maybe it wasn't them. Maybe it was just the ice cream truck. And if the ice cream truck thing was all in my head, maybe the plucking was all in my head too. So I Googled it. The plucking. The only results I got were some kind of economic theory, a guitar tutorial, and a cosmetic hair removal video. Oh shit, I thought in a cold sweat while reading that last one. Maybe it was some sort of long drawn-out scalping method, or maybe it was not real, stupid. Not a single result about torture, is there? Maybe it was a new method. Maybe it's really underground, or maybe it's not real. Despite that nagging voice at the back of my mind for the rest of the day, I decided to come clean and tell my wife that I'd been sneaking out to get ice cream without her knowledge. She laughed at first, but as I kept going, telling her everything, her smile faded into panic and terror, into expressions I didn't even know she could make. You're putting her in danger, I thought. There is no danger. How do they even know what I'm telling her? Nobody's bugged our house. When I explained the whole radio thing, my revelation, she was hesitant at first to believe. But as we kept talking, the whole anonymous tip thing came up, and it seemed like a careful solution in case I was wrong. Unless I was very wrong. It was her idea, and it was a good one. So if this tip thing helps, and we pray it does, thank her. We've since taken necessary precautions, too. I bought a gun. Won't describe what kind for purchase history tracing purposes, but believe me, it'll do the job. and I keep it under my bed. I also upgraded my home security system thanks to ADT and put a vague word in with the neighborhood watch about those ice cream trucks, just in case. I also got my hands on a phone book and have started sifting through the Berts. You'd think for as long as I've known the guy that I'd know his cell number or his last name, but you'd be wrong. The final precaution was this tip, our brave boys in blue. So thank you, Anonymous. Following the reception of this anonymous tip, the Lincoln Police Department began an investigation into both Soft Serves LLC and the utterly fun Dairy and Poultry Company, since the anonymous whistleblower has not come forward yet.